In 2023, Bola Tinubu won the Nigerian presidency with 37% of the vote. Let that number sit with you for a second. 37%. That is not a mandate. That is not a landslide. That is not even a majority. That is the smallest winning share in the entire history of Nigerian presidential elections. And what that number tells us, quietly, clearly, is that from the very first day Tinubu entered Aso Rock, the opposition already had a mathematical opening. The question is, who has read that number most carefully? And what are they already doing about it? Because right now, while the entire country is watching the Naira, watching fuel prices, watching the economic pain of subsidy removal, there is a different game being played. It is being played in private meetings, in diaspora financing channels, in legal filings, and in the quiet calculations of governors deciding which side of history they want to be on before 2027. I am going to walk you through all of it today. The institutions, the actors, the legal mechanisms, the international dimension, and the one move hiding in plain sight that could reshape this election entirely. Stay with me. This gets deep. And if you are new here, Naija Update 24/7 exists for one reason: to give every Nigerian, wherever you are, whatever region you are from, the political analysis that mainstream media will not touch. Hit subscribe. Let's go. Let's establish what we are actually dealing with. Nigeria just came through an election that produced a winner with minority popular support in a country already fracturing under economic pressure. The fuel subsidy removal hit harder than almost anyone predicted. The Naira depreciation wiped out savings, raised prices, and pushed millions deeper into poverty. And the political consequence of that economic pain is now crystallizing. But here is what most analysts are missing. This is not just an economic story. It is a timing story. In every Nigerian democratic cycle since 1999, the most dangerous window for any incumbent is not election day itself. It is the 18 months before party primaries, when political coalitions are being formed, when financiers are deciding where to commit, and when the architecture of the next election is being quietly assembled. We are in that window right now. Three things have converged simultaneously to make this moment unusual. First, the Supreme Court has closed the legal door on the 2023 election petitions. Tinubu's victory is constitutionally settled. But the procedural questions raised during that process about election law, about INEC's conduct, about evidence standards have left a residue that opposition lawyers are still working through. Second, inside the APC, the recent cabinet reshuffles have exposed visible cracks. Governors who get loyal in 2023 are now running private calculations about 2027. Federal appointments have not satisfied every power block, and that internal tension is exactly the kind of fracture that a well-organized opposition can widen. Third, the PDP's ongoing implosion. The irony is this: the collapse of the main opposition party has paradoxically freed certain political actors to think bigger. Without PDP as the obvious home for anti-APC sentiment, the space for a cross-party coalition platform has opened up, and someone is already designing that platform. Now, before we name names, we need to understand the arena. Because in Nigerian politics, institutions matter just as much as individuals, sometimes more. Three institutions define the 2027 landscape right now. The first is INEC. INEC's continuous voter registration exercise has produced something that nobody in the political establishment is talking about loudly enough. The fastest growing demographic on the new voter register is 18 to 25-year-olds, concentrated in Lagos, Kano, Onitsha, and Port Harcourt. Stop. Think about that. That is not a footnote in INEC's report. That is the entire 2027 election. Because if young urban Nigerians register and turn out at even half the rate that demographic energy suggests, the electoral mathematics of every major party changes. And right now, only one political actor is actively building infrastructure inside that demographic. We will get to who that is. The second institution is the National Assembly. the Senate and House have become a quiet battleground for 2027 positioning. Floor votes that appear to be about policy, fuel subsidies, exchange rate mechanisms, security appropriations are increasingly being used as loyalty tests. Which senators are drifting from the APC line? Which House members are receiving visits from opposition financiers? These are the signals the political operatives are reading in real time. The third institution is the Federal High Court system.
Cases currently being processed relate to voter registration reform and party delegate structures. And buried inside the Electoral Act of 2022 is an ambiguity that a well-resourced legal team could exploit. There is no constitutional minimum threshold for how opposition actors coordinate across party lines to support a consensus candidate. The gray zone between coalition politics and formal party structures is real, and it is being studied. Now, the actors. Let's start with the man who has contested the Nigerian presidency more times than anyone else alive, Atiku Abubakar. The conventional wisdom says Atiku is finished, too old, too familiar, the perpetual candidate who never quite makes it. And on a purely personal level, that criticism has merit. But here is why that conventional wisdom is dangerously incomplete. Atiku is not just a candidate, he is a network. He is a northern elite bloc. He is the most extensive nationwide political infrastructure that any non-incumbent figure has built in Nigerian democratic history. Governors know him. State party chairmen owe him. Diaspora donors in Houston and London have funded him. And none of that disappears because he lost in 2023. If Atiku runs, or more precisely, if Atiku's network backs a candidate, whether himself or someone he positions, that network is the backbone of any credible opposition coalition. No one else in Nigerian opposition politics has a substitute for it in the short term. Now, Rabiu Kwankwaso. The NNEP's 2023 performance was underestimated and underanalyzed. Kwankwaso delivered a credible northern vote bloc without PDP infrastructure. Think about what that means. It means the northern political base is not monolithic, not automatically committed to any single platform and available for the right offer. Kwankwaso knows his value. He will extract maximum concession before committing that machinery to any alliance. Expect him to demand either the vice presidential slot or a binding commitment on Senate leadership. He will not come cheap, and he should not, because his price reflects what he actually brings. And now, the third actor, the one I told you about at the top, Peter Obi. The narrative after 2023 was that the obedient movement collapsed with the election loss. That narrative is wrong. Labour Party's grassroots infrastructure did not dissolve after February 2023. It reorganized, quietly, methodically, at the local government level in urban southeast and urban southwest constituencies. The young people who worked polling unit shifts for Obi in Lagos and Enugu did not simply go home and forget what organizing felt like. They gained a skill, and that skill is now dormant but not gone. The residual obedient energy represents an uncommitted bloc that, under the right coalition conditions, functions as a kingmaker. Whoever secures that bloc's alignment shifts the urban south decisively. The strategic question, and nobody has answered it yet, is whether Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar can find a structural accommodation or whether their ambitions split the opposition vote again in 2027 as they did in 2023. That is the central puzzle of the next 18 months. Now, the states that actually decide this. Everyone will tell you Lagos and Kano are the big prizes. That is true, but incomplete. The decisive states, the ones that swing a competitive presidential race, are Borno, Plateau, Benue, Imo, Delta, and Edo. If an opposition coalition can shift even 3 of those 6 states from their 2023 positions, this race becomes genuinely unpredictable. And in the southeast, which remains the most important regional wildcard, the political calculus is simple. Any opposition actor who can credibly offer Igbo political inclusion at the VP level or through meaningful federal commitments turns the southeast into a swing region. Tinubu has partially made that offer through cabinet appointments. The opposition counteroffer does not yet exist in a coherent form. That is both a gap and an opportunity. Let me bring this down from the level of strategy to the level of lived reality, because none of this matters if we do not connect it to what ordinary Nigerians are actually experiencing. The economic pain of this administration is not evenly distributed. That is not a partisan statement, it is an observable fact. The removal of fuel subsidy, the naira depreciation, rising food costs, these fall hardest on the poor, on daily wage earners, on the young person in Kano or Port Harcourt trying to start a business in an economy that has made capital inaccessible. That unequal distribution of pain is Tinubu's real political vulnerability in 2027. And I want to be precise about this, because the conventional opposition argument is simply that the economy is bad and therefore Tinubu will lose. That argument is historically wrong. Nigerians have re-elected governments during economic difficulty before. The question is not whether things are hard. The question is whether voters believe the hardship is shared or whether they believe it is being imposed on some Nigerians while others are protected.
Once again, kindly remember to subscribe to my channel. I understand it means nothing to you, but it means everything to me. This work of research and analysis cost me a lot, and the only means of paying me back is your subscription. Thank you. If any opposition actor can make that case credibly, with evidence, with policy alternatives, with a coalition that itself visibly crosses ethnic and religious lines, then the emotional mathematics of 2027 become unpredictable. On security, the Northwest and Middle Belt continue to bleed. That is a legitimate political liability for any incumbent government. But any opposition figure who tries to politically exploit insecurity without offering a credible security doctrine of their own will face backlash from a population that is exhausted, not merely angry. On inter-ethnic and interfaith dynamics, the 2023 election left wounds that have not healed. The most dangerous 2027 scenario is a campaign that deliberately weaponizes those fault lines. The most durable political architecture is one that explicitly builds across them, as the 2015 Buhari-Osinbajo ticket attempted to do, whatever one thinks of what followed. One dimension of this that Nigerian media consistently undercovers: the international context. The United States and United Kingdom have maintained cautious, calibrated engagement with the Tinubu administration, but both governments have signaled through embassy statements and legislative testimony that the integrity of Nigeria's 2027 election will be a benchmark for continued bilateral security cooperation. That includes counter-terrorism financing cooperation and ongoing negotiations around asset repatriation. These are live, consequential relationships. They are not background noise. For Nigerians in the diaspora, in the UK, the US, Canada, across Europe, I want to speak directly to you. The 2027 election is not an abstract homeland event. Nigerians' diaspora remittances are now Nigeria's largest single source of foreign exchange, exceeding oil revenue in certain quarters. The exchange rate at which you send money home, the conditions your families face, the direction of the Nigerian economy, all of it is downstream of political decisions being made in Abuja right now. You are already participating in this economy. The question is whether you are also participating in the political conversation that shapes it. And one more international factor. China's continued infrastructure financing of Nigeria creates a geopolitical counterweight to Western pressure. Any opposition actor who positions themselves on a Western democratic alignment platform will need to reckon with the fact that Nigeria's current infrastructure debt structure does not disappear with a change of government. That is a policy question as much as a political one. We opened with a number, 37%. That is the share of votes that put the current president in Aso Rock, and the coalition of actors who are positioning to dismantle that margin before 2027 are not operating in public. They are operating through networks, through legal filings, through diaspora financing, and through the private calculations of governors watching their own survival odds. The machinery is already moving. So the question I want to leave you with is not who will win in 2027. That question is premature and honestly too simple. The question is, do you understand what kind of Nigeria each of these political architectures is actually building and for whom? Because the 37% that put one man in power can be rearranged. Elections can be won and lost, but institutions, the courts, INEC, the National Assembly, the culture of democratic accountability, those take much longer to build and much less time to damage. Nigeria's 2027 election will either deepen this democracy or stress test it in ways we will feel for a decade. What happens in the next 18 months matters. We will be here, watching all of it. If this analysis gave you clarity, share it with one Nigerian who needs to understand what is really happening. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Naija Updates 24/7. We never stop watching.